Hey, evolving spirit. How y'all doing? Let me turn this music off. My goodness. We are not used to having recordings. And so you are going to notice a couple of things. Number one, it's not Sunday. Number two, it's not 1 o'clock. Number three, I'm not in all white. And number four, this is not going to be as long as it typically is. Hey, y'all, I'm Coach Yolanda from Evolving Spirit Wellness. On Sunday, we have our live Mama Meditations at 1 p.m. This Sunday, we were just not able to do so. But before we get to next Sunday, I wanted to make sure that we continued our conversation about trust. We are doing inner child healing in the year 2023. We, right now, in the month of February, are talking about the developmental stage of birth to 18 months. Last week, we talked about preparing for birth. We talked about trusting ourselves. This week, we are going to continue the conversation about trusting ourselves. And one of the things we talked about last week is that anytime a client of mine or someone that's just having a conversation says, I've lost direction, I'm not clear, I don't know what I'm doing, I need clarity, I always hear, I'm not spiritually connected, or there is some disconnection going on within my mind, my body, and my spirit. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to continue the conversation. Again, we're not going to be as long as we typically are because it is a recording. And without the feedback from my beautiful, beautiful individuals that join us on Sunday, this is just going to be a short conversation. We are going to talk about another element that comes into play when we talk about being trusting ourselves and being prepared and feeling like we have done whatever we needed to do to prepare ourselves. When you think about the birth to 18-month age range, those of us who are parents, we do as much as we can to prepare for that child coming into the world and making sure that we try to stay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of the development of that child. Even with our best efforts, sometimes we miss some things. But one thing is for certain: when a child is at that birth to 18-month stage, they absolutely have this inherent ability to trust. It happens at birth. That baby cries out, there is a response. It's cause and effect. And that baby starts to learn, if I do this thing, there will be a response that is pleasurable. Hopefully, that's what the baby experiences. Hopefully, that's what the child experiences as they develop, so that they not only just develop trust, but they also develop safety. And so for many of us, we, had experiences in that time frame. We may not be consciously aware of them, because how many of us can remember what was going on in our life when we were born to 18 months? You may have pictures, people may have told you things, but if you don't have a direct connection to that experience for yourself, you can only go based upon what developmental skill is introduced at that time frame. And trust is absolutely something that has to be established between the baby and their caregivers, no matter who that caregiver is. Someone has to be responsible, right? And so, even with the best of efforts, even with caregivers doing everything that they know that they can do and heaping on all the love and attention and affection and care and all of the nurturing that we hope that every child gets as they come into the world, even when all of those things are in place, there are still things that happen to disrupt the feeling of trust. And that can still show up as we age, as we are adults. It could be as simple as a baby crying out and no one respond. Or when a child begins to learn how to walk, they might fall and hurt themselves. That can also contribute to that feeling of my steps are not safe, or this world is not safe, or I can't count on my voice getting me what I need, getting my needs met. And so, even when the intention is there for everyone to give a child from birth to 18 months everything that they need, sometimes things happen that can disrupt that feeling of safety and trust. And so last week we talked about what can I do? I gave you all those 5 tips, those things that you can do to support yourself in trusting yourselves, because we all have this inherent mechanism within us. It's what led us here. We all have it. And how can we tap back into that mechanism so that we are trusting ourselves more? And one of those additional elements is, drumroll, forgiveness, self forgiveness. We are specifically talking about self forgiveness in this short meditation. Self forgiveness can be challenging if, in fact, you have a challenge with forgiving. Sometimes it's easier to forgive things outside of ourselves, because we love to hold on to guilt. We love to hold on to shame. We love to hold on to regret. And again, that birth to 18-month age, sometimes, even when the best of intentions have been laid, we internalize someone else's behavior as somehow being our fault, or that we were the catalyst to push people to do particular things. Sometimes a mother could just, be speaking to a baby and say something like, "Look at my body. My tummy used to be so flat until you came along." You absorb that. And now it sounds like, well, I'm the reason why mommy's not happy with her body. That may not have been mommy's intention, but that may have been the messaging. Or a sibling saying to a young baby, "I was the favorite until you came along." And so we can start to absorb those kind of feelings, and then we internalize it, and it eats away at our self-value and the way that we feel about ourselves. And so as we go into our meditation, I would like to focus on self-forgiveness so that we can forgive ourselves for internalizing any messaging that may have felt made us feel less than, or that we couldn't trust ourselves, or that we had some great and grave impact in the world that caused some kind of destructive mechanism to be unleashed. One thing I know about babies is that they're innocent. One thing I know about babies is that they don't do anything to cause harm, hurt, shame, regret. There may be other elements around the birth of a baby, but the baby itself does not cause these things. Children are innocent. They cannot be blamed for their existence. And so, for all of us who may have internalized that type of messaging, for all of us who ever felt like they may have been the black sheep of the family, maybe you were the last one born after a long stretch, and you might have been the surprise in the family. Or maybe you just felt different. Maybe you just have grown up with the experience of feeling like your presence somehow caused some uncomfortable or uncertain feelings in your family, in your community, in your school. Right now, we're talking about that birth to 18-month age where trust is really established. If there are parts of you that feel like your birth, if there are parts of you that feel like your existence, or what you may have caused with your existence somehow caused harm, I'm here to tell you that it hasn't. I'm also here to tell you that that is a natural human experience for every single one of us to feel as though we did something destructive to our mothers, to our fathers, to whomever our caregivers are. That's a natural feeling. We all like to blame ourselves for something. But as we are talking about our inner children, that birth to 18-month old. I want you to think about that time frame, even if you can't remember what was going on in your family and in your life at that time frame. Think of you as a baby and continuously tell yourself, it wasn't my fault. Yeah, my birth may have made things in the house a little bit more difficult financially. And yeah, I may have come at an inopportune time. Babies somehow have a way of doing that. And yeah, I may not have been, the baby that my mother, my father, my caregivers expected me to be. When I see these gender reveals and somehow people are upset at the gender of the baby, imagine that energy. Imagine that energy being absorbed while you are in your mother's womb. There are a group of people who assemble to try to figure out your gender. Some people are going to be happy, some people are not. Imagine absorbing that energy. Before the child even comes into the world, there's this energy of, you're not the right gender. Oh, wish you were going to be something different. I have my money set on this particular gender instead of the other. We absorb that, even in our mother's womb. So if any of that is residue of that kind of stuff is in your experience, and you are trying to learn how to trust yourself more, and you are trying to learn how to depend upon your thoughts, your feelings to guide you, then you might be in order for some self forgiveness. And so that is where our meditation is going to lead us today, into the energy of self forgiveness. One of the things that I know personally for myself, I'm always blaming myself for something. Oh, you didn't do this right. Oh, you didn't do that right. I am one of two children in my family of origin. I'm the youngest, I'm the baby, and that comes with a whole host of things. But certainly I always looked up to my older sibling and always felt like I wasn't good enough, I wasn't smart enough, I'm not, certainly not tall enough, I'm not as tall as he is. And so when you grow up with that kind of, oh, wish that I could be like the sibling above me or the sibling below me, when you grow up with that kind of energy, it impacts you, where you don't trust yourself. You don't may not stand up for yourself in the way that you would like to. So today, or whenever you are watching, because it's not Sunday, this might be a good time for you to offer yourself some forgiveness for ever thinking less of yourself. This might be a good time for you to offer yourself some freedom from guilt, freedom from blame, from shame, from regret, to think about the core belief that from the time of your birth to 18 months, that there was ever anything that you could have done that could have impacted or made somebody act in a particular way. How many of us have grown up with a story of an absent parent? And maybe if, your birth had been a happier occasion, they would have stayed. How many of us internalize the abandonment of even the parent that stayed? If you grew up in a single parent household where one person is doing the work, and you might be hearing stuff like, this is too hard, and I didn't sign up for this, and where is your other caregiver? Babies internalize that, whether we are aware of it or not, and it chips away at you trusting yourself. And so now is a good time for you to gather up your inner children from birth to 18 months and say, hey, listen, it wasn't your fault. I understand that you may have internalized somebody else's stuff. I understand that your caregivers did the best that they could to make sure that you had everything that you need, and perhaps you did, but at some point in your life, you didn't feel like it. Maybe you didn't feel wanted. Maybe your experience of coming into this world came under so much stress, conversation, and maybe even came with a whole lot of, we don't know what to do with this child. That may have been part of your birth story, that may have been part of your, first couple of months of life. Maybe you also had the experience of, you weren't developing at the pace that everyone else wished you had. You didn't talk when everyone wanted you to talk. You didn't walk, you didn't crawl, you didn't turn over, you weren't holding your bottle. Maybe there just were some things that other people thought you should be doing that you just weren't doing. And there was all of this worry and fussing over you. And not that it wasn't important, but what did you internalize because of it? Now might be a good time for you to forgive yourself for thinking that any of that meant that you were less than, or that you are not divine, or that you are not deserving of love. And so now is a good time for us to take a deep breath. And as always, check our environment to make sure you're all watching this as a recording. And so we want to make sure that we are watching at a time when we can place ourselves in an energy of comfort, because that is something that every baby needs, to be comfortable, to feel safe, to not only feel safe in your body, but to feel safe in the environment that you are in at this right now moment. Another way to do that is by taking deep breaths, connecting with your body, connecting with the energy of your inner children. So, whatever, if you remember or if you've been told, whatever you may have looked like, or whatever, state of being you may have been in, maybe you were born in the South, maybe you were born in the North, the East, the West, maybe you were born in the spring, summer, winter, fall. Maybe you were the firstborn, middle child, baby. Maybe you are the only child. Maybe you have the experience of being born on a particular famous day, like Valentine's Day. Or maybe you were born on the birthday of someone else in your family. And so you share a birth with someone else and you have that experience. Maybe when you came into the world, there was a name already waiting for you. Or maybe you had to wait to receive your name. Maybe that name was shared with others in your family, so you are part of a proud lineage of people bearing that name. Maybe you are the second or the third or the fourth. Maybe you are the first son. Maybe you are the first daughter. Maybe you were born into a family that never thought it would be possible that you would be there. Maybe you were born into an experience where there was loss before you, but now you are here and you carry the energy of that. And maybe as you were developing from a newborn to 6 months old or 10-month old, there were all of these other things going on around you that had absolutely nothing to do with you, even though it impacted you. And at this moment, you can take a deep breath, search within your body to see if there is any energy that made you feel as though you were not wanted in this human life experience. And maybe you can do a scan of your body right now to see if you have been told a story that made you feel as though your birth impacted everyone else in your family. Whether the impact was one of financial worry, whether the impact was one of space, or maybe your impact was, we just don't know what to do with this baby. This is our first, and we just don't know what to do. Whatever your experience, see if you can search within your body at this moment, starting at the bottom of your feet. And oh, how babies are checked over thoroughly when they are born. And maybe, you had the experience of no one really fawned over you. They pretty much kind of left you alone. Or maybe you had the experience where you didn't have a moment's peace because somebody just kept picking and prodding and, oh my gosh, never left you alone. And now, as you move up from the bottom of your feet to your legs, your knees, your thighs, Don't we love babies with juicy thighs? I don't know why that is. We just do. And thinking about yourself and the inner children that are within you at this moment, in your baby belly. We love a big old baby belly. Maybe that was not your experience. Maybe you came into this world prematurely. And maybe your mom or your dad or whomever your care attended caregivers were not able to hold you initially because there were other concerns. And maybe that experience carried over for quite some time. And so that skin to skin touch that all newborns need was delayed. Could that be impacting your feeling of trust? It could be. And so as we are now scanning our body and we're up in our chest area, out to our shoulders, our arms, all the way down to our fingers. And that's one of the things that everybody does when a baby is born. We count the fingers, we count the toes. Ask your body, is there an experience within this body that has made me feel like I cannot trust myself? Search your shoulders, search your neck, search your face. We love looking in babies' faces. We love to watch babies wrinkle up their noses and their little eyelashes when they flutter, when they recognize that the world is a bright place. And what am I doing here? Why is it so bright? And of course, we are checking out that baby hair. Some babies are born with not one strand on their head, and some babies are born with full heads of hair. And maybe if you have the benefit of having newborn pictures of yourself, you can remember through the picture what you look like as a newborn: 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, how you developed. What was your favorite toy? What was your favorite color that, for whatever reason, your caregivers seem to always put you in that color? If you are a child of the 70s like I am, maybe you had one of those propped up on the couch with the plastic cover on it. Everybody seemed to have one of those blanket pictures where they prop the baby up with pillows so they could take a picture on the couch with the plastic covering. Maybe you have a black and white photo, or maybe you have the experience where there's just no documentation. You don't have any baby pictures. And somehow you have created a story around not having any baby pictures. Why does everybody else have baby pictures except for me? Maybe y'all just didn't care. Take a deep breath. Search your entire body to see if there is a story that you can hand over into what we're going to consider to be a bowl of self forgiveness. And as we continue to take a deep breath, we know that there are so many things that need to be contained in this bowl of self forgiveness. If there are any feelings of not enoughness, or maybe I didn't come at the right time, maybe I wasn't born into the right family, maybe I wasn't born into the right body. Whatever the messaging or language that your inner children are speaking at this moment, we're going to place all of that into this bowl of self forgiveness. So, with your good eye, which is your third eye, I want you to visualize before you a crystal bowl. It can be as large and as round as you need it to be. However many thoughts and feelings that you want to place into this crystal bowl is up to you. And as you continue to breathe deeply, knowing that you have checked your body, you have checked in with your inner children to ask them the question, what do you need from me in this moment? What can I offer you in the way of self forgiveness? What story is stuck in your memory that would make you think that your introduction into the world could ever create any harm, any guilt, any shame, any regret? How is it that someone else's story has attached to you and created this disconnection where you now have to offer yourself forgiveness for thinking that your birth was untimely, or that your birth was unwanted, or that your existence somehow made things more challenging for your immediate family or for society at large? So, within this big crystal bowl, there are some things that we need to cleanse any of those ideas, and so that we can offer up ourselves some forgiveness. We're going to need patience in that bowl. So, just imagine that there is some liquid patience swimming around in that bowl. You're going to need to be patient with yourself as you offer yourself some forgiveness. You're going to need to understand that this thing that might be attached to a core belief in your body, in your mind, and in your spirit may not be yours. It may have started long before your conception. It could be attached to your family, it could be attached to your culture, it could be attached to the idea of who you are, whether that is your gender, your race, your skin tone, your complexion, your able body, your abilities or lack thereof, particular abilities. It may not be your stuff. And certainly as a baby and as a young toddler, it's not your stuff. And yet we have internalized it. And so we need patience in this large crystal bowl that is before us. There is liquid patience in abundance so that we are patient with ourselves. In this healing process, there have been things that we have been told, that we have been sold, that other people have imparted into us, that have attached to us, that we have absorbed as the truth. And those things come up now as an adult that make us feel less than. And right now, we can pour some of that patience onto those feelings. It may not get resolved today, tomorrow, it may take some time. Give yourself patience, give yourself grace. Let's pour some grace into that crystal bowl. We certainly are going to need some compassion poured into that bowl as well. So we have patience, we have grace, we have compassion, great compassion that everyone did what they did because they thought they knew what they were doing, even if their intentions were not clear, were not pure, and could eventually be harmful. No one wants to do damage to a newborn, to a toddler, and yet people do damage. People cause harm. People cause feelings to be created within us that we as adults now have to deal with. And we are going to forgive ourselves for ever thinking that any of it was our fault. It was not your fault that you were born into a society that did not appreciate you. It is not your fault that you were born into a family that may not have known what to do with you. It is not your fault that you were created by two people who didn't have their stuff worked out before you came into existence, and therefore it impacted the way in which you see yourself and the way in which you develop. It's not your fault. that people stayed. It's not your fault that people left. It's not your fault that people were not capable of dealing with your stuff because they were not capable with dealing with their own stuff. And so compassion has to be in that crystal bowl of self forgiveness. I forgive myself for not having compassion for my hurt, my pain, and the hurt and pain that was inflicted upon me that wasn't my fault. And it may take a lot of compassion for many of us to get to that place where we feel like we can offer forgiveness to others. But right now, we are offering that self forgiveness to ourselves. If we ever thought at some point in time that the lives that we were born into were so difficult, so hard, that there's no way that God could have been present. For I forgive myself for ever thinking that God forgot about me. I forgive myself for thinking, God, you must have made a mistake for me to be born into this family. God, you must have made a mistake for me to be born into this country, into this culture, into this social economic status. God, forgive me if I ever held that in my consciousness. Can I forgive myself for thinking that I was ever alone, even if my story has abandonment and neglect within it? Lord knows I'm going to need some forgiveness for those feelings that I have been carrying with me that somehow come up as an adult, that I needed something when I was born and it wasn't there. And somehow God dropped the ball. I forgive myself for ever thinking that. I forgive myself for thinking that if I had been born in any other skin, in any other culture, in any other family, in any other way, that my life would be better. I do not know that to be true. And so I offer myself forgiveness for thinking that God somehow made a mistake. Let's take a deep breath. So we've got patience and we've got compassion and we have grace. We got to have some love in this crystal bowl that is sitting before us, where we are pouring out all of the things that we want to forgive ourselves for, that we may have attached to us, that is other people's stuff. I may have eaten someone else's words and fed on that for years. I have no idea. I may have overheard, I may not have even understood the language, but the energy was true. That I may have been in the arms of, in the hands of someone who didn't really care for me in the way that I deserve. And so I forgive myself if I ever thought that was my fault. Take a deep breath for yourself. Offer yourself whatever is in your crystal bowl. I've got compassion. I've got patience. I've got grace. I've got truth. And I have love. Because the truth is, I was born into the family that God Almighty decided that I needed to be born in. Some things happened that impacted me greatly, and I, at this moment in time, am releasing myself forever thinking that any of it was a mistake and that that mistake had something to do with me. Let me take a deep breath. Now, many of us could be telling a story. Well, my mama and my daddy should have never got together. It was a match made in hell, and I don't know how those two. You could tell that story. It does not mean that you and the creation of you was a mistake or that you are a mistake. So if any part of you feels that way, offer it to your inner children now to say, baby, it was not your fault that those people couldn't get their stuff together. Baby, it was not your fault that you came into the world at the time that you came into the world and people were not ready to deal with you. It was not your fault. And if you are carrying that, then empty that into that crystal bowl where there is compassion, there is love, there is truth, there is grace, and there is patience. And anything else that you need to pour into that bowl so you can cleanse those core beliefs that may have been created when you were born up until the age of 18 months, because that's when trust is developed, that's when safety is developed. And next week, we're going to talk about safety. We're going to talk about determination. If you ever want to see someone determined, watch a baby that's trying to learn how to walk or learn how to crawl. Doesn't matter how many times they fall down, they're going to do it. And so, all of those energies coming together, safety, determination, and trust at this age range, how does it come up for you now? Are you trusting yourself? Do you feel safe with yourself? Do you give up easily? Ask your inner children about that, and I guarantee you they will have an answer for you. And so, as we have this crystal bowl that is cleansing the idea, the illusion that anything that happened in that date, in that age range from birth to 18 months could have ever been your fault, pour that into that bowl to say, this no longer serves me. Me blaming myself for other people's behavior when I was a baby serves no one. You blaming other people serves no one, but certainly you holding on to some guilt, some regret, some shame, some emotion, as if your little beautiful baby self could have created all of this confusion. It's not necessary for you to do that as an adult. And I guarantee you, if there is some story attached to you believing that at that age, somewhere as an adult, you are still believing that other people's behavior has something to do with you and you are to blame for it. You are internalizing something. It may not even be people that you know. You know, we are watching a lot of things unfold around the world, particularly when it comes to race. And I know that I have had the experience of being told, don't do particular things because you don't want other people to think that about the entire race. So I am supposed to feel guilty for the actions of someone else? No. Just as I think it's crazy for someone who is not of my race to think that they know who I am because of my race, I also think it is equally as crazy for someone who is my race to somehow say, I am responsible for the behaviors of other people. Do you see how that kind of stuff happens? Where we internalize and think, I can't be who I want to be because what is that going to look like to other people? We have to be very, very careful about how we trust ourselves, how we feel safe with ourselves, and how we, are determined to live our lives the way that we determine we want to live them. Are you trying to be what someone else wants you to be because their behavior is not in check? I don't know, whenever you guys watch this, I just saw a video of a young lady who had to fight a man off in the gym. And some of the comments were like, well, she shouldn't be there at night, or why did she let him in, or why was she dressed like that? So she is supposed to be responsible because he don't know how to act. Whew. Tell me, if she internalized all of that and started to blame herself for being attacked, how that also would impact her trusting herself. And now her life is being lived in a limitation because of someone else's behavior. We have to be very, very clear how we internalize other people's stuff and then we punish ourselves for it. And so, all of this self forgiveness is to release yourself from the punishment of thinking that as a baby, you did something wrong. You couldn't have. You were innocent. And so, I don't care what story your family is telling, I don't care what story you might be telling. Be mindful of how it's showing up now. Maybe, there's some long running joke that's not funny funny to everybody else in your family except for you. Maybe it's time for you to say, you know what, that joke ends today because I was a baby. And while you might think it's funny, as an adult, I no longer think that's funny because that impacted me. That impacted the way that I think about myself, the way that I feel about myself, and I don't need that. I don't need that. And so we've got some patience. We've got some grace. We've got love. We've got truth. We've got compassion. And whatever else you need for yourself to release yourself from that feeling of somehow my birth, somehow my existence made it difficult, challenging, or whatever the story might be. Oh, you took a long time to talk. Oh, you took a long time to walk. What does that mean? What does that mean? And how is it impacting you now? Stories from about you when you were a baby. How is that story showing up now? So that might be a good journal exercise for all of us to write down the things that you have been told about your birth, write down the things that you have been told about you as a toddler, and see if those things are showing up in some shape or form. If we were live, we would be able to have a discussion about it. But because this is a recording, I'm offering you the opportunity to do this self discovery yourself. Write these things down. And as we move into Sunday's meditation, we will talk more about safety. We'll talk about determining. We're going to talk about so many different things in this month. I want you to start to establish a relationship with yourself, to ask yourself these questions, and to recognize that some of these things may have started so long ago that it even predates you, and to release yourself from the burden of carrying other people's judgments, criticisms, and their ideas of who you are or who you were. We learned a lot of lessons in our lifespan. Some of them have served us well, some of them we no longer need. And so I'm grateful that I had this opportunity to do this recording. Again, I'm not dressed like I usually am because I got to do things when I feel good. And right now I feel good. I hope that that continues so that we can return to our live meditation on Sunday, February, I don't know, 20 something, maybe 19th. Is it? No, 20th, the 20th. It'll be the 20th when we return on the 20th. And as always, if you want to go deeper into this work, we have the Evolve community. It is a subscription based program where I give you more information about the developmental stages, some activities that you can engage in to support you in healing your inner children. And we can start to get into the playful activities. There's not a lot of play that goes on, independent play that goes on between birth and 18 months, but a lot of that conversation is going to start to happen in the Evolve community. There is a link in my at my website right here. Click on the Evolve community, join us. Once a month, we do a live healing. You get your Reiki, you get your meditation, you get so much more when you are part of the Evolve community. If that's not something that you're able to do, you can always schedule some office hours with me. My calendar has changed, but I still have time Tuesday through Saturday. I still have some hours available Tuesday through Saturday. So, again, at my website, YolandaToole.com. You will find a link, office hours. I would love to have conversations with you. For those of you who reached out to me last week, You don't know how much that helped me in terms of my own wellness. I thank you for those conversations. I thank you for those who do join live on YouTube, live on Facebook, Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I have also put out a call for increasing subscribers. So if you are watching and you're not a subscriber, I pray that you subscribe and then share it with others who may be willing to meditate in a different way. This year, again, we're going to be doing inner child healing every month, a different developmental stage with different spiritual principles that come up in that stage of development so that we can do the work to heal our inner children and release ourselves from the things from the past so that our future looks different. I love y'all. Thank y'all for watching this recording. You can chat and comment on YouTube and on Facebook, and I'll respond. But I'm just so grateful to be able to do this, and I look forward to being back live with y'all on Sunday. Have a good one, y'all. Love you.